the Jiangsu Super League really tap into that territorial pride. The 13 cities, they're quite balanced in terms of demographics, GDP. When you're growing up like in a big family with 13 sons and they're of the same age, the same size, the same strength, you will have this very competitive nature towards each other. So this is an interesting thing. I understand the hype, I understand the popularity of the Jiangsu Super League, but the question to myself is always, what's gonna happen after the hype dies off? Because the professional league is only focused on 1% of the total football population there, but you want to expand the reach. One factor during my football career that tend to be ignored is grassroots, is the foundation. Grassroots is more than just youth development. You need to have the people play. It doesn't matter like how old are you. You can find a place to play. You can engage with the football activity. So that's the foundation.
Welcome to Inside the China Room, your premier destination for insights into Chinese current events. I'm your host, Jiang. Today we're talking about football, but not the kind that usually grabs global headlines. Instead, we are zooming in on a grassroots phenomenon that's been capturing hearts across China, the Jiangsu Super League, officially known as the Jiangsu City Football League. This amateur competition in East China's Jiangsu province has become a sensation, drawing nearly 20,000 in-person spectators and racking up hundreds of millions of views online. With 13 teams representing 13 cities, the league has even outpaced some professional leagues in attendance. Its popularity follows the early rise of the Village Super League in southwest China's Guizhou province, a rural tournament that made waves a few years ago by showcasing the passion and community spirit around grassroots football in China. These local leagues are catching fire at a time when the national team continues to struggle. Just weeks ago, China's hopes for the 2026 FIFA World Cup came to an end after a 1-0 loss to Indonesia. It's now been 25 years since the country last qualified for the tournament back in 2002. While football is one of the most beloved sports in China, the performance of men's team in recent years has raised new questions about how to nurture and sustain high-level talent. So what can these grassroots leagues tell us about the future of Chinese sports? What's next for China's football development? And how is China navigating both the challenges and opportunities of developing major team sports such as football? To explore all this, I'm thrilled to be joined today by Chen, CJ, currently FIFA's Football Development Manager for East Asia. Before joining FIFA 6 years ago, CJ worked at the Chinese Football Association as an international relations officer, where we were colleagues actually. He's also worked with the East Asian Football Federation and Manchester City Football Club. Hi CJ, great to have you on Inside the China Room.
Thanks for having me here. I mean, you and I always talk about this, and finally I'm here today. Very excited to delve into the topic we're having today. And obviously, we will talk about this Jiangsu Super League and the things beyond Jiangsu Super League, as well as some of the football landscape within China. Because you and me, we have this past. We work together as colleagues in the national organization of football in China. So this conversation will be interesting, and I look forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, I've been expecting this talk for a very long time, as you just mentioned. To kick things off, could you tell our listeners a bit more about yourself, especially what drew you to the football industry and what your current role at FIFA involves?
I mean, growing up, I'm just a football fan. You can just say this. I think I get this influence from my father. And my first World Cup dated back to 1998, when I just watched that on TV in my grandparents' house. And at the time, we just follow whatever is happening during the World Cup, and that's a tournament draws everybody's attention. In the past, what I'm trying to do is probably just teaching some English. Yeah, I know it sounds boring, but it's something related to my major, doing some of the translation stuff in university and college as well. But I think just this type of inner calling is always drawing me to the football field. Although I couldn't necessarily just perform on the pitch, but anything surrounding should be where I belong. So this is why I'm here today. And my current role is managing some of these football development and international relations for FIFA, especially to take care of the member association in East Asia. And we do some of the development program in which we provide support to the national FAs in the territory of East Asia for them to execute some of the much needed projects such as infrastructure foundation. We can do football pitches, and we can help them organize certain new competition or revamped competition. We can also organize some of the workshop, just focusing on the capacity building, and as well as just investment in technology. I know that there's lots of things going on here and there, but in football, it never stops.
So you mentioned about responsible for the football development in East Asia. Can you tell our listeners what are the main countries included in East Asia in your definition of East Asia football development?
Yes, so the geographic allocation of East Asia in the football map is we have China, Japan, Korea, and we have North Korea. But in football terms, we call them Korean Republic, which is South Korea, and DPR Korea, which is North Korea. And apart from that, we have Hong Kong, Macau, as well as Chinese Taipei. And we also have Guam and Mongolia. So that completes the 9 FIFA members in East Asia.
So there are mainly countries and regions, right? Like the membership of FIFA.
Full members, yes, that we have signed in East Asia. Yeah.
Well, CJ, looking at your resume, you have very diverse experience in the football sector. Before joining FIFA, you have worked at the Chinese Football Association, like we were colleagues before, and you also worked for the East Asian Football Federation and the Manchester City Football Club. Can you tell us more about your roles in these different organizations and how does that shape your opinions or ideas about football development generally?
Absolutely. I started as a stadium tour guide at Manchester City Football Club. And then after a couple of months, I proposed to establishing all these Manchester City's Chinese social media presence. For example, the WeChat official account, like we are quite familiar nowadays, but 12 or 13 years ago, that was just really a new thing for most of the Premier League club. Not only I managed the establishment, I also managed the contents on a daily basis to help Man City communicate with their fan base in China. After my tenure with Man City, I joined East Asian Football Federation. And that's where I work at the secretariat and managing the daily operation with the 10-member association in East Asia. And also we deliver the flagship tournament, which is called East Asian Cup at that time. And shortly after that, I joined the International Relations Department of Chinese Football Association. And we managed the international cooperation and international affairs in general with the rest of the world. And also that's a place where we built a relationship with the Asian Football Confederation, also FIFA as well. Overall, we did lots of things. One of the key tasks is to help run in the election campaign for our leadership, and in order to get a position, either the confederation level or at the international organization level, which is FIFA. And then right before the pandemic, I joined FIFA and managing the work and the job we just discussed earlier.
That's great experiences. I mean, that's also brought me thinking about some in my old days in Chinese Football Association. And, because recently in China, the amateur league, the Super League has been, exploded in popularity. I don't know if you have paid attention on that. I know actually, I'm not sure. I mean, are you only focused on professional football development, and also you pay attention to community or amateur football development? But before that, we also saw the Village Super League, the Chen from Guizhou make national headlines. So, can you tell us more about your observation of the Super League, the Jiangsu, football competitions recently from your professional perspective? What do you think makes these grassroots tournaments so successful, so popular? And are there any lessons that China's national or professional leagues could take from them?
Okay, so first of all, from the standpoint of my job, we only work with the national FAs, which is our member association. So anything beyond that in terms of the grassroots we're trying to talk about today, I can only share my opinion as an observer. And because we don't directly work with them, we only work through the national FA, which are our members. I'll go back to your question about this phenomenon we're witnessing, either Jiangsu Super League or the Village Super League you just mentioned. If you reduce everything to one fact, right, you need to see what's the key factor that drive their success or drive their popularity. If they have something in similarities, that's the support and endorsement from the government or local authority in terms of the security, the rental of stadium, And as well as basically, we can say the subsidy from the local authorities is definitely there. Otherwise, the organizing of the competition, you still need to spend a lot. And in terms of the difference, that's sort of, you can use that to differentiate the success of Jiangsu Super League and Village Super League. I think the thing is with Village Super League, it's more of a temple fair. It's actually like a miaohui. Going to the football match, yes, the football is in the center, but what's surrounded is more than what's happening on the pitch. You can have the traditional performance during a Village Super League. You can have food stalls to try the delicious food from that village, as well as some of these the flea markets. Basically, anything you can expect from a temple fair, you can expect from a Village Super League match. And this is what actually the core concept to drive them to the popularity they have today. And in terms of the Jiangsu Super League, it's slightly different. I would say they really tap into that territorial pride. We call in Chinese 属地意识. I say the reason they're so competitive is they're quite balanced in terms of demographics, in terms of GDP. I know that Suzhou is up there, but in terms of the balance, you see the gap between somewhere else in the other provinces. You don't see in Jiangsu province at all. So when you're growing up like in a big family with 13 sons, and they're of the same age, they're of the same size, they're of the same strength, obviously, you will have this very competitive nature towards each other, and people will compare yourself as well. So this is an interesting thing. So the Jiangsu Super League really tap into that territorial pride, push everyone to compete with each other. And this is one of the key factors that drive their success today. And also the popularity, I would say, is something like crowd. In fact, 群众效应. It's like when something become popular, you don't want to get missed out. You want to also get in the crowd to see what's going on.
A FOMO mindset, fear of missing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. The FOMO, the fear of missing out. I mean, like 2 years ago, you heard of Pop Mart, but nobody talks about Nabubu. But today, everyone wants a Nabubu. This is because the thing just become popular. So everyone wants to get a taste of that. It's same to the Jiangsu Super League as well. The two Super League, they share some similarity, but in terms of the core concept that drive their success is quite different.
I like your comparison of the league like has like 13 children and each city represents something and people compare about that. I think that actually creates topics, especially among like social media platform nowadays. And for people who are not very familiar with Jiangsu province, it's like comparatively very developed province in China, and like it has 13 cities. And I think, as CJ you just mentioned, these 13 cities, the economic level, the size of the economy is quite comparatively
balanced,
similar to each other, balanced each other compared with other provinces. That actually remind me of the situation in Europe, because we know that in Europe there are many countries, and they are close to each other, and I don't think there is like a very big gap of economic size or economic development level in Europe. And we know that Europe has been doing is one of like the top places for developing football. And you have been actually worked with British clubs before, and so can you tell us more about the football culture, the differences between the football culture in China and the Europe?
Yes. So it's a huge difference. I would just say that in Europe or in like North American, as you would understand, basically sports or football in general is just part of life. It's a lifestyle. If you have a big match the previous night, the second day, that will become everyone's topic during lunch, during dinner. They will just come up to you and say, have you watched the game? That's the first thing literally that starts the conversation. But if it's in China, that would never be the case. I would say like sports in general, it's never a mainstream stuff in China. I know this is a kind of a hot take, but considering like how many gold medals like we can manage to obtain during the Olympics, but does that represent like the fact that you're actually a strong nation of sports? Because whether it's a strong nation of sports, it really depends on like how much football or how much sports occupies your daily life.
Yeah, I mean, as you just mentioned that it's not like that very common topics about talking about soccer or football nowadays in China, in small talks. But I remember 25 years ago, at that time I was in primary school. At that time China was, got the chances to enter into the World Cup, which was held actually in East Asia, in Japan and South Korea. At that moment, I think because the national teams, the football players, they got lots of opportunities of exposures on media, though at that moment we don't even have social media. But I think for the general population, many people are very familiar with the names of the national team football players. That I think that is highly relevant to the performance, right? The performance of the national team. But we know that in the past 25 years, maybe the country, the national team's performance hasn't been that good as 25 years before. I'm just wondering, so is like the technical performance like a key element of football? Is that very important? But if we're looking at the Super League, we know that the technical level of the players are not like professional. I think they allow like at most like 3 professional football players to be each team, but most of the players are not professional players, but they are really attractive. Like people like to watch. I think you just mentioned about like the city vibe, right? People can represent their cities and compare. That's very important. So in terms of branding and commercialization, is technical performance the most important thing, in your opinion?
I mean, technical performance is always important when you are a pro. But when it comes to Jiangsu Super League, like you just mentioned, they are like semi-professional or amateur. Just a note on that, I understand some of the teams, they're using some of the professional players as well. And some of the teams, they're using the academy players, which are on the path to become a pro. So you can argue that they're
like university players,
university or some of the academy at one professional club. They can also borrow the player and use that, just play in the match, fill in as well. So they also have some of the semi-professional or on their way to become a full professional. So this is also the thing. Back to your question, I would say it really depends on like in terms of the fans, right? What they want to get from a football match. If you want to get the technical excellence, you don't watch the Jiangsu Super League. It's like we say, it's the city rivalry that draws you there. And also it is that the local authority, the government, want to use Jiangsu Super League as a city business card to shape their identity and in order to boost the cultural and tourism sector of the province. It depends on what you want to see. Technical aspects for Jiangsu Super League obviously is not a requirement. I think it's the fun, it's the excitement, it's that primitive, it's the raw, the pure joy of playing football, participation. It's the same shared with the Village Super League. That's the thing that brings on the table and to be shared with our fans.
Yeah, and I noticed that there are actually, I think as you mentioned earlier in our show, that there are also lots of things around the games itself. Like there are like shops, consumptions, like traveling. Like I see, I saw news that like hotels bookings was like increased a lot during the like competitions. I think that whole altogether created like a vibe for watching games, right?
Exactly.
And you also touched a little bit about China's ambition of becoming a strong sports nation from a big sports nation, like from 体育大国 to a 体育强国. I think that was actually in the development plan that published by the Chinese authorities. Like I think the Chinese government is quite aware of the situation that as a country in terms of the development stage in sports. China is a big country. We got lots of gold medals in Olympic Games. But on the other hand, I think the government also mentioned a lot about improving, revive the performance of the 三大球, like the 3 big ball, football, basketball, and volleyball, right? So, one of my past guests in my podcast noted that despite the large populations, both China and India have relatively underperformed in football, in the world. How do you view the relationship between like the population size and sports performance? You're also covering you are covering the East Asia, right? East Asia is
Correct.
like places that has relatively big populations, like in Japan or Well, how do you see the relationship?
I would like to answer your question by asking you a question. Does every population in China or India play football? No, we'll talk about the demographics in a country. We'll talk about the people that interact with us in daily life. It's the ordinary people. We're not talking about the football population. If you look at how much registered players every either in China or India. I never delved into this data because I believe the number is quite small and it's quite unfortunate in terms of such a big population. You only have a small hand of registered players that can really help you grow into your professional team. So that's the issue. The issue is our registered players is even lower than those of Japan and those of Korea. But how much of the population in total those countries compare to us? It's not, you know what I'm saying? But if you only have a small hand of the player registered as an official player, that just sort of translates indirectly to your underperformance of the national team because you simply don't have that enough people playing football in your country.
To follow on that topic, I mean, you are like you're responsible for development. Can you tell us more about how do you facilitate the football development in China, and how can that contribute to the things that you just mentioned, the number of registered professional football players in China, and maybe also in other East Asian countries?
We have this tailor-made approach to different national FAs, but as you can imagine, what's needed by Mongolia is not required by Japan. And sometimes, even for one country, what they want is not what they need. So this is the reason I'm there, to basically work with the national FAs to understand what's the issue in that country and what's the most urgent things they need to be solved. And the same thing, like you said, China, if you want to know, the new project I'm working within is basically FA Cup, 足协杯. So within the past year and this year and going to be the next year as well, for 3 seasons, we're going to support them to expand the reach. So back in the day, they have a certain amount of the teams participated in FA Cup. But with the support from this program, they're going to expand the reach to some of the amateur teams and to some of their qualification in each region. So this is what we're doing, tailor-made. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you tell us more about like the 足协杯? Because maybe for people who are not very familiar with that, for FA Cup, 足协杯 means like Football Association Cup, and it was attended by, I believe, different levels of regional football associations in China, right? Can you tell us more about that? Yeah.
Yes. The full name is CFA Cup. It's the same as the FA Cup in UK, 足总杯. So basically, it's apart from the Premier League. In China, they have FA Cup organized by the FA, the Football Association of England. And the same thing is like the China Super League is organized now by an independent league system, but the FA Cup is still organized by CFA. And as you correctly mentioned, so the FA Cup is aimed like a football for all. So not only they want to include the teams on the top, they also want to include all this. Even start from the qualification, they have some amateur league, they have some amateur teams, amateur clubs join and compete. Until the 3rd round, if I'm correct, the China Super League team will join and play. And I think from the 2nd round, I think it's from the Division 1, League 1, so which is 中甲. So it basically compresses Super League, League 1, League 2, and member association league we call 中冠, which is the 4th tier, and also some of the grassroots clubs or amateur clubs at the foundation of the pyramids.
Why is that important for China to organize the FA Cup when we already have like the 中超, like the professional league? Why is that important?
Because the professional league is only focused on how much, I would say like 1% of the total football population there. But you want to expand the reach. I think this is very important because one factor during my football career that tend to be ignored is grassroots. It's the foundation. We always talk about youth development. We talk about elite training. We talk about all sorts of national team performance, but we don't talk about grassroots. Grassroots is more than just youth development. You need to have the people play. It doesn't matter like how old are you, okay? You can find a place to play. You can engage with the football activity. So that's the foundation. And from that foundation, you have 男女老少. You have basically all the gender. You have basically all the age. And you basically have the kids, they participating from that level. And then from that foundation base, you go upwards. And in there, you can make a decision. Either you want to go elite, go pro, or you just stay with the amateur league or something like that. Without the people participating in the first place, you don't have the youth development you want to have.
So do you believe that in terms of popularity, the Super League, the Suchao will kind of replace the professional league in China?
Not a chance. I understand the hype, but football is an entire ecosystem. It's not about one thing replacing another. If I am leadership or the C-suite management of the national FA, I'll be more than happy to see more of the Jiangsu Super League, this grassroots-oriented football league, exist in China. And I believe before the Jiangsu Super League, I mean, now it's a thing, but before that, I'm pretty much sure that Jiangsu province also organized their provincial football league as well. It's just they didn't do all this promotion and in order to shape an ideal identity in the market. They never put the name on the map. But the football league in Jiangsu province already exists before. So this is what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
I think that we also have like the Yuechao, like the Guangdong provinces league, right? That's like quite popular. Like over 10 years ago when I worked for the Chinese Football Association, that's already very popular. Maybe only like not all the people's nationals know that, but they're really popular in Guangdong, right? It's also like a relatively developed economic powers province, and it has lots of cities can participate in that.
Exactly. And that's also part of the grassroots participation we're talking about. So when we talk about ecosystem, in essence, I would say it's two things. Number one is the grassroots, is your participation. And number two is the professional league. It's basically your channel to become a pro. So if you're at grassroots level and you're really, really good, and you start with grassroots and you go to the youth development and you go to a tryout at a professional club, and eventually you will represent a professional club in the China Super League. And that's where you go. And that's the path. You can see that's a path. Both of them intertwine. They should be connected with each other. If one thing, you don't have enough participation at grassroots level, that meaning that you don't have any of the talents going upwards. And if your professional league is not that sustainable, that means that even the people participating at the grassroots level, they didn't see any of the bright future you are holding for that. So this is what I'm trying to say, the ecosystem.
I mean, I think that was definitely very important, as you mentioned about like the grassroots, then like a pyramid, right? That on the bottom of it is like a grassroots, and then we hope that we can have more and more registered players based on like the football population, right? And I know that in the past 20 years, the Chinese Football Association has done a lot trying to improve the football population and the level of football, and you and FIFA has been assisted with the FA a lot. And at the current stage, what priorities of developing football in China are in your opinion? What are the priorities? Let me just say some elements. For instance, the number of professional or youth coaches, or the number of pitches you just mentioned, or we have to have more, foreign-born players join the Chinese national team, which I believe the national team has been doing like for years. And
Neutralization.
neutralization, or maybe just the grassroots culture, football culture, such as the Suchao created. What are the priorities in terms of your opinion?
If you ask me personally, not stand for any of the organization I'm working at or I have worked in the past, I would say it's grassroots participation. It's not only about the elite youth development. It's about this grassroots. If you and me hang out in Beijing or whatever, wherever we are, we want to play football. Where we go? Do you know? Do you have idea nearby your home? I don't think so. Do you have the crowd? Do you have your bros to hang out and play a ball, kick a ball with you on the pitch? Do you know how to book that? I have to repeat the word ecosystem again, because it's like, it's not only for football. It's not only like saying you have one ball and you can kick around everywhere. It's like you need to have the equipment. You need to have the pitch. You need to have the facility to use. And then you need to have the people, the right person to play with. And if you move forward a little bit, and you need to have the right person to coach you as well, to provide you the guidance in order to improve yourself. So it's only after you boost your grassroots participation, okay, and then you can have more registered players, right, eventually in future. So this is what I'm saying personally. I would say grassroots participation. And then I just share with you this in addition to what we just mentioned about the declining player registration. Okay, it's not only a thing in China, it's also a situation currently that's unfolding in Japan as well. But to tackle that, their FA team up with Disney in order to boost the registration for girls. I may be wrong in this, but if you participated in a Japan FA organized tryout through their system, and you can have some sort of this souvenir or package, like a training kit, that's clapped with Disneyland. And you see, this is how they can use all sorts of incentives to boost the registration players. And this is something like in here or rest of the world, they can learn, but you just need to adapt to the local context and culture. If you want to attract more girls to play football, you need to know what the girls like at this phase of their life and this age. And to team up with all these interesting cartoon characters from Disneyland, it really draws attention. At least they can have a tryout, put their name there, they try, and they get the Japan FA and the Disneyland the clapped shirts, and they go back home happy.
Yeah, that's actually one of the reasons, one of the questions that I was about to ask you is that how China can learn from the experience of like the football development in South Korea and Japan. I think you touched a little bit more on that, right?
Yep.
The grassroots culture, right?
Correct. Yes. It's all about yeah. You first of all, you should have a extensive reach, which is you need to understand what's happening in the rest of the world, especially for this football powerhouse. That's either your neighbor or that's either just the traditionally very strong teams, what they're doing. And some of them you can just intake and digest and internalize and translate that into something that fit the local context and you can work out and use it.
And let's explore maybe a little bit broader concept that for like the team sports, like the football, like basketball, volleyball, they are all team sports. I mean, football is like one of the main team sports across the world. How do you see China navigate the challenges of developing team sports versus like individual sports? Because we know that for instance, in Olympic Games, we can see that Chinese national players they can won like lots of medals, medals in like gold medals in like individual sports, right? But it seems relatively more difficult for Chinese team to win like team sports. Why was that?
I mean, team sport is more like marketable. It's 就高度市场化 we're talking about. And I mean, when it comes to individual sports, whatever these Olympics, the games they have, they compete in, it's you can really find the talents somewhere in China. We go back to the population we're talking about. You can really find some of the talents, and they're one or two individual. And then you put them in a centralized training system. And then you put all the resources and all this training facility, the best of training facility and all resources and focus on that one individual and you translate that talent into performance. I would say that's very much manageable. Okay. And that's why you can obtain so many gold medals there and you can achieve success at Olympics, even at the highest, competition as well. But when it comes to the basketball or football where we're talking about here, I have to use the word ecosystem again, but it's also about the career path of a player. It truly matters. Success at one certain Olympic sport doesn't translate into football. Football eventually is the 11 people aside. And also the fact that basically the best resources is actually not in China. The best resources in Europe. It's about the environment.
I see. Well, back to the Super League topic. I mean, I think nowadays the social media platform really contribute a lot to the popularity of such games. But we know that in different months we have different topics. I mean, 2 or 3 years ago, people talk a lot about like the Chao, like the village Super League. Now we talk about the Jiangsu Super League. Maybe next year we are going to talk about some other things. But in terms of the accessibility of such great games, how do you view like the prospects of Chao or the Super League in terms of, how do you transfer the benefits or make sure that the benefits of such popularity of such games being able to, really help the development of the local, no matter it is like local sports culture or like the grassroots like registered players?
That's $1 million question, Jiang. Actually, I understand the hype. I understand the popularity of the Jiangsu Super League. But the question to myself is always, what's going to happen after the hype dies off? Everything, they come up fresh, everybody wants it, and eventually the hype fades away and people just leave the show. And this is the same. I'm trying to do assessment on Jiangsu Super League as well. And currently they're doing very fine. I think there are lots of sponsors and partnership, they managed to build up because of the popularity of the league. The organizer of the league, they need to understand all this partnership they managed to obtain right now they are after the popularity, the hype of the league, not after the league. You understand what I'm saying? The difference is all this partnership, for example, the English Premier League, they have the Bundesliga, Serie A of the world, the sponsors, they are after the league themselves. They are not after the popularity or the meme or the hype surround the league. They're after the league itself, and they're trying to build up and eyeing on a long-term partnership. But for this one, they're after the visibility, they're after the hype, the 流量, the 热点. That's what they're after. And eventually one day, if nobody watch Jiangsu Super League anymore, do you think this partnership will retain? In my opinion, it's a question mark. So what I would say from my personal view is they have to unblock the connection, not necessarily professional league, but at least with the fourth tier, which is the 中冠联赛, like we say CMCL, Chinese Football Association, Member Association Champions League, we call 中冠, which is the fourth tier, it's like amateur league. They need to sort of unblock the connection with that channel, or maybe even better is like, okay, what's going to happen when you become the champion of this inaugural edition of the Jiangsu Super League? Will you get the privilege to participate in the next edition of the CFA Cup? That could be a good idea, because otherwise, after this season, everyone is very fresh and become the king of Jiangsu province, whatever. They have this territorial pride comes with it. But after 2 seasons or 3 seasons, you need to find something more in terms of promotion and relegation in football. They need to be interconnected with the professional league system in China in order to further foster the development of the league and also achieve the sustainability we're talking about. In this case, I would say find a way to build a connection with the CFA Cup, or find a way to connect with the league system they're having right now. In that way, this league get to become a little bit sustainable in terms of competition. In terms of all this finance and the financial sustainability, that's really a different story. It depends on how much investment the local authority would like to continue offer, and it depends on how much of this, like you rightfully mentioned, like how much of that leadership under a certain term limit would like to continue focusing on this competition after the hype kind of dies off. So when we look at a new thing that's so popular today, I argue about the sustainability, and that's something I attach high regards to that aspect of the thing or the league or the competition or things in general.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point. And I would hope, because I'm from Jiangsu, that the Super League can, continue on the headlines. But on the other hand, I understand it will not always be on the headlines. So after, like you just mentioned, the hype dies out, what are we going to do with this Super League? I think that's really something the people in Chinese sports sector should consider, and also local government should consider, because it's a good thing. We just want to, keep that, or, maximize the social influence of that to contribute to the development of football in China. Now let's move to our recommendation session. I ask every guest to share something they enjoyed recently. It could be a book, a movie, or podcast, a TV series, or even a video game. CJ, what would you like to recommend to our listeners today? Or we can just also, chat about our favorite shows if you'd prefer something more casual.
I would just share a book I read probably last year, not this year. It's a book called Mastery by Robert Greene. I don't know if you heard of that, but you probably heard of another book he wrote. It's called 48 Laws of Power. That's a book about basically how not to be manipulated by other people. But this book, Mastery, is a book about how people grow into their full potential by really committing to something they truly, truly love. And in this way, they achieve mastery. And I think that there are 2 key messages I'm quite fond of from the book. One of them is just like the importance of listening to your inner calling. Some of that's very primal, subtle, personal voice that's always there. That's the voice that tells you what you need to do. And in that niche, you can achieve things. But basically, people are swamped with their daily work, their jobs, social pressure. And that's the voice we tend to ignore. And another message is basically something quite applicable to our career path. It's a critical phase that where every student, so these eventually need to move beyond their mentor or teacher. It's not out of disrespect, but it's really as a necessary act of independence. So the book says true mastery requires forging your own path, integrating what you love, then pushing into a new territory where your voice leading you to, and that defines your work. The book is called Mastery by Robert Greene.
Thank you for the recommendation. That sounds very inspirational. I will definitely check that out. I would also like to recommend a TV series that I watched recently. I don't know if I have checked that out. That is called The Day of the Jackal, 豺狼的日子. It's about like a killer in Europe who has like some secret tasks and he has to travel into different countries, but he hide his identity to his family, which turns out to be like some dramas and some mess. The show was great, and I recommend that a lot. Yeah.
That's a very interesting concept. Yeah, I think we have same enough for the one common show, Mad Men, and I think that's the most talk about TV show between us, right? Since our
that's like a very old TV shows, but it's very classic ones, and I know that there are many fans of that TV shows in China. Although it talks about like the golden times of for advertising sectors in America, like in 1960s, right? My correction. My memory is
through 70s.
Yeah, say 60s, 70s. But the nature or the content of that is not just about their advertising. It's about human beings. It's about life. It's about lots of things. Yeah. Well, I definitely will also recommend that because that's one of my like top 3 favorite TV shows. Yeah. And of course, we can the Breaking Bad is also, I think, something that we talk a lot about
For
before.
sure.
Right? Yeah.
I think from Mad Men, right, that show impressed me the most because that just set the example. You can make a good show without killing each other off on the script. So basically, we know that we have the great show like Breaking Bad, we have a Game of Thrones, so we'll probably have some of the other TV shows that's so great, that's enjoy to watch. But the fact is, like, they have to do some of the shooting, gun shooting, or killing each other people off, off the screen. But Mad Men is actually set the bar very high. It's like you can have a show simply focus on the character's development. And it's the intertwined relationship between each character that's so mesmerizing, right? That can really drive you go through season 1 to season 7 without any of the effort saying like, we need to give them some of the jump scare or we need to just really to kill someone off. This is honestly, it's like effortless and they deliver a great show.
Mm-hmm. Although there are also some people pass away. I mean, the character pass away during the show of Mad Men, but they are not like killed by someone. But I think the deaths of every single important character also, well, means a lot in the plot, in the story. So yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you so much, CJ, for coming to my show. I mean, as I just mentioned before, I have been looking forward to this discussion for a very long time, and definitely looking forward for you to join me, sometime in the future. I believe, as you just mentioned, on the one hand, we hope that the sports, for the phenomenon created by the, Suchao can be sustainable. On the other side, I believe that there are also many more sports-related topics that we can talk about in the future. So thank you so much.
Definitely. Thank you again for having me today. And I look forward to revisiting your podcast anytime soon.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Inside the China Room podcast. For cooperation, investing, or feedback, you can email me directly at jjiang.sisu@hotmail.com. Alternatively, please consider leaving a rating and a review on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or Substack. If you find our podcast helpful, we would be delighted if you recommend it to others. See you next time and take care.